Hello, I'm Mark Childhouse, and because things on the internet seem to lose their date references, today is Sunday, June 12th, 2022. A couple of weeks ago, on a Department of Veterans Administration email, I received an article about CAVARTS, Challenge American Veterans Through Arts with Arts.org, CAVARTS.org. Kind of interested. I like learning things. I love learning new skills, whatever. I love relearning the things that I've learned a long time ago and forgotten. A couple of the things that they listed in their current activities is a writer's session, get together, talk about writing, whatever else. I love to write, 69 books published, all college textbooks, so who really wants them? I love to write. I want to write fiction. I've got some sources, I've got some dreams, I've got some desires. I've written some pretty long articles about fiction. I haven't gotten them published yet. I want to get back to playing the guitar, making my granddaughter laugh, making my wife's dimples come out when I play the guitar, because I do not play well and I sing absolutely horrible, but I love to make people laugh. I love to make people enjoy life. One of the other things that was in the CAVARTS program was leatherworking. I love leatherworking. My dad did leatherworking. Over the years, all I've done in the leatherworking is repair belts, dog collars, leashes, animal harnesses, stuff like that. And I've always enjoyed it. It's something you do with your hands. You make things. You're successful at it. You learn. You get better as you go. Their current program in cooperation with Tandy leather out of Fort Worth, with stores all over the place, including here in San Diego. Really cooperative staff, Latifa, Marco, and one other individual that I didn't get her name. She's down out of the Los Angeles area. Pretty darn helpful, pretty informative, knows what they're doing. At least they impressed me that way. With Tandy and Scott, and I wish I knew his last name, maybe I'll find it and put it up as text box. They're doing a thing, Feathers for Vets, and the intention is in September they're going to string it up in, I believe it's Cleveland, and possibly have it tour other VA medical centers. Scott's tutorial on leatherworking was really good. It's available on the internet if you join CAVARTS.org as a veteran. So I made the trip down to Tandy Leather. Didn't even know they were there until I researched them and picked up the materials. Can't say it was a cheap endeavor, but the answer is I'm having a lot of fun. I followed Scott's guidance and created my first feather, carved my first feather. I don't have the right paints. If you watch his video, I do not have the right paints. I have a bunch of acrylic, watercolor type, water-based arts paints. I used what I've got. Made one feather, turned it in, was pretty happy with it, and decided to make another one because I'm trying to play with the leather and trying to get my skills down and whatever else. Made another one, and make them any way you want. This guy here, kind of have fun with the painting. I won't say it's great. I will say it was fun to make. A lot of technique involved. Technique I still need to master. I'm not a master at this. Working with leather makes me feel good. Why? Because it increases my skills. I like to know things. When people come up and say, I've got a problem, I like to be able to provide solutions. If I can't provide the solutions, I like to provide the problems, one way or the other. Really fun project. I've got a project for my granddaughter, trying to figure out how to come make that successful. so that she has another skill in her basket of assets. So I'm going to step you through some of the still shots, unfortunately, and narrate how this goes to give you a basic understanding maybe of how to work with leather, how to make a leather feather for Vex for the program. And I wish I had videos of this, but it's a timely process, and to make this guy here, including paint, is probably an 8-hour project. Probably 3 to 4 hours of carving and texturing it, and painting. The reason it's so long, painting, you have to paint segments, kind of let it dry a little bit and then see how it comes out. At least I did. Maybe other people have better luck with it. So let me step into it, and I'll walk you through how to make a feather. I guess walk you through, show you how to make a feather. Scott's video is a lot better. Mine's just a lessons learned and some info on technique. Let's go over to the still shots. When you're going to be working with leather, you need actually 2 different types of surfaces, and Tandy recommends working on marble. I would love to work on marble. A 12-inch by 12-inch by 1-inch thick slab of marble is $35 plus tax. Momentarily, I'm going to hold off on that purchase. I picked up masonite, 1/4-inch masonite from Home Depot for $8. I had MDF down in the workshop, and I created this surface. It's about 11.5 inches by 24. It's double-sided masonite both sides if you flip it over. Glued it down, clamped it, whatever. It's flat. It's solid. It's really solid. This is what I use for stamping. You have to have something that does not absorb the shock, so you need something that's hard. The other one that you're going to need is something soft for cutting, because you don't want your cutting point to go into that masonite and be damaged. This one here, picked up at Tandy, works really nice. As you can see, it's already got cuts in it. It's heavy. It's like 1/2 inch thick. Another item you're going to need, strop, S-T-R-O-P. This hones, polishes the cutting edge of your instruments, and when you're using this, you're always pulling away from the point, not into the point. Tandy gives you 3 patterns, as Scott says in the video, a 6, 8, and 10 inch. This is the 10-inch pattern, and it's laying on top of the transfer film. What you want to do is you want to lay the transfer film over the pattern, anchor it some way. I use tape. Then use a pencil, preferably, to trace these lines just as accurate as you possibly can. If they're straight lines, use a straight edge, because you're going to take this to form the pattern onto the leather. I'm going to use a very fine sharpened pencil to copy it. I'll give you some tips because I love to draw. When you're working with all of these tools, make sure that your vision is going from your eye to the point of the tool, as shown here. I can see the point, I can see where I'm drawing. In this next one, it's backwards, and you make the assumption you know where you're going. You can't see what you're drawing, so this is the wrong hold. You want to keep the cutting edge in view at all times. Once you've got the pattern copied to the transfer film, you put the transfer film on the leather and you anchor it somehow. Scott used really nice alligator clamps with rubber tips so that he didn't damage the leather. I didn't have them, so I took a file folder I had in my paper clamps and cut some additional stress distributors and put them on. And at that point, you now take a round tip scribe, and on softened leather you're going to run this scribe over your pattern and push the pressure into the leather. You do not want to draw on the leather because that's going to stain it and give you issues later on. So you run the round tip scribe over your pattern and keep the point of the round tip scribe always in view. You don't want to work on this on the back side. Once you've got the pattern imprinted, and you're going to need ample light for this, you're now going to use what's called a swivel knife to cut the pattern for the first pass onto the leather. And the way you use the swivel knife is kind of fun. The swivel knife cannot tilt to the left or to the right of the cut. It has to be vertically in line with the cut. You're going to lean it forward so that you're cutting, you're using only the point of the swivel knife, and you're cutting probably 1/3 to 1/2 the thickness of the material. The second feather I did was not in as high a quality leather as the first feather, so it gave me just a little bit difference in cutting effect. But however, I will tell you, as I showed you the swivel knife on top of this strop, stropping this thing every once in a while made a big difference. Here's the pattern fully cut out with fully outlined, not cut, fully outlined with the swivel knife. This is step 17 of 104. I'm being minorly sarcastic, of this whole process. You're going to, the way Scott recommends, and the way I recommend, because I learned from Scott, do the quill first and then work from the quill outside. The next step you're going to do is you're going to bevel or imprint the pattern very distinctly. And I will tell you, I'm using rubber mallet because that's the best I've got at the moment. This is not a great tool for it. It's an acceptable tool. It's not a great tool. And this is a bevel. Bevel has a very wide foot to it. It has a grain to it, a pattern to it. And what it's going to do is we're going to use that extended, I think it's called the toe. The toe is the thin part, the heel is the thick part. I'm going to call the thick part the heel. We're going to use the heel up into that swivel cut line to put a pattern on this leather. Scott talks about, and I'm giving Scott a lot of credit because I've either never learned this stuff or I've forgotten it along the way. You need to hold this in reference very close to the material, having your left little pinky finger up on the material so you can actually feel it move, allowing the bevel to bounce, so you're starting at just a milli-inch, thousandths of an inch or whatever off the material. It's not resting on the material as you hit it, and you're going to walk it. Now, how far are you going to walk it? Maybe 1/4 of the width of the tool. And if you happen to sing, as Scott recommends, you develop a rhythm. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to bevel the quill inside the ribs, the strings elements of the feather. You're not going to do the quill that's outside what's called the ribs. Once you've got the quill done with the bevel, then you're going to start on the feathers. Now, one of the things I learned was a few of my bevel works were a little bit too wide, and you can see some of the ridges in here. And what I discovered is if I take the beveling tool, I can rub these out and smooth these out and make them pretty nice, pretty smooth. They don't have to be perfect because you're going to work with them later on anyways. This is the feather probably 80% beveled, 70-80% beveled. The next thing I did was, and Scott shows his tool, I made this one based on Scott's. I took double-sided tape, put it on both sides of 3 of the X-Acto knife blades, put it on one side of 2 of the X-Acto knife blades, and then I stacked them to give me the depth. And with this, then I drilled a hole in the bottom of a piece of dowel rod. I used CA glue to glue these guys in. I will tell you, this is a very dangerous tool. you get cut with this really easy. Then I had to make a special little holder to hold this thing because this thing is sharp. And what it's going to do is it's going to put the texture that you see here on the feather. It's going to put the ribs on the feather in the leather. And here's the texturing of the feather. You start right next to the quill, pull it past the edge of the feather so that it doesn't stop falsely. And you can see that I've got some bad cuts in here, some bad swivel knife cuts, whatever. You know what? I'm not perfect. I'm learning this. I'm having fun. The other thing is the leather is receptive to errors. Nature isn't perfect. Nature doesn't like straight lines, and no two feathers you're going to find are alike. At this point, we've done all the carving, stamping, beveling, swivel knifing, whatever on the front that we need to do. There's one more step with the front, and that is cut the excess material off. So what I did was I flipped it over on the other side, and on the back side, which this is pretty rough material, but because the feathers for vets is going to be strung from fish line overhead in a display, you're going to be these things are going to spin, turn, be visible from both sides. What I decided to do was I decided to play with the back side a little bit and put some texturing on it. You can see I just stabbed it where the quill went. I started putting texturing on it, had a lot of fun just trying to do it and seeing what my skill level is. Would probably make a fair amount of leather smith's ricochet, because in trying to smooth this stuff up, among other things, I tried sandpaper, and I will tell you, sandpaper doesn't do much to this at all. I was just wasting my time. Not a good idea. When the back was finished to the point that I wanted to call it quits, I came back at the front and took a heavy X-Acto knife and wanted to start carving this thing out. The reason you want to do that is because the edge of the feather comes to a very narrow edge, and if you cut this vertically through, you're going to have to remove a lot of material after the cut in making the edge of the feather come to somewhat of a point. So took the heavy X-Acto knife. Thin one is probably a little too thin, just not strong enough, so to speak. Took a heavy X-Acto knife and started cutting, and incrementally went at it, being rather careful. And you can see the inside the rib lines, where they overlap, where they interlock, whatever you want to call it, they need to go all the way down to the quill, just for detailing, close to reality. And the feather is pretty much fully cut out at this point. You can see the texture on the top side of the feathers, the ribs of the feather in this photo, just because of the angle of the photo and the lighting. Flipped it over, I think this is called a skiving knife, I'm not sure. Flipped it over back on its face to bring those edges to a kind of fine point. This tool kind of is giving me a problem. I haven't figured out how to work it fully yet, comfortable, but it gave me a halfway decent bevel, and the ends of my ribs come to a fairly nice point. With that, I will tell you that the last step in this is doing a little cleanup work with a razor knife. You see some extra little hairs hanging on the side. X-Acto knife took care of those kind of nicely. And as I said earlier, all I've got is acrylic type art paint. It's the wrong paint. I've got some paint for an airbrush gun, and that turned out to be what I used to paint this guy. So I painted the quill some sort of shade gray, just for the fun of it, and then phased in the rest of the colors as I so desired. And I'm hand holding the camera, so it's a little tough, but this is my finished feather. Kind of fun. Different quality leather. than the first one, and came out obviously just a little bit different. Kind of like the way the colors blend. They aren't real distinct in the video, but there's actually 3 shades as it goes from red to a lighter red to yellow as it goes. Kind of had fun with this. Enjoyed making this. I will tell you there's 1,000 mistakes in making this feather, and probably 4 things that are right. Working on skill levels. And the finished product. I honestly don't think as nice as the first one. I think that's because I got a little more daring with technique, tool usage, whatever else, and there was a difference, distinct difference in the leather between these two. So leather does mean a lot. Had a lot of fun making it. We'll turn this one into Tandy Monday, June 13th, 2022, and then move on to a project for the Bean, granddaughter, the Bean. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it.